Today's Miami Heat report is all about this man right here, Kyle Lowry, and 5 realistic trade ideas where the Heat can maybe attach a first-round pick or other players alongside Lowry to upgrade this roster, because the fact is he's a 38, 39-year-old point guard making $29 million a year on an expiring contract, and the Heat probably do have to trade him if they want to upgrade this roster. But before we jump into that, today was the first day of Miami Heat training camp. It opened up at FAU today, so hit that like button. Heat basketball is just around the corner. I couldn't be more excited. I know it was a bummer how the Damian Lillard saga ended, but Heat basketball is almost here, and you got to be excited for that, so hit that like button. I will say this, though, and the Heat need to trade Kyle Lowry as we dive into the 23-24 season for Miami. Like I mentioned, he's a 38, 39-year-old point guard making $29.7 million a season. That's the third most on this team, and he's not even a top 5 player on this roster. So the fact of the matter is he has to go. He's making too much money and isn't worth what he is making. And what you can do is attach his contract with a pick, it's an expiring, and send him out to a team that isn't ready to compete for a title. They take the expiring, and you take better assets. And things kind of got muddied in the water today at training camp as well, because Kyle Lowry, after the first practice for Miami, said that he expects to be the Miami Heat's point guard come starting point guard, come opening night against the Detroit Pistons, and he says he feels great physically. The awkward part of it, though, is that Erik Winderman came out and said this when talking to Erik Spoelstra following practice. Erik Spoelstra was non-committal to Kyle Lowry being the starting point guard. And it makes sense, right? Like, Kyle Lowry was good for the Miami Heat in the postseason last year. Hit some big shots. Was a main contributor in that finals run. But he did it coming off the bench. And I appreciate what Lowry has done over the past 2 seasons. When you think about the Heat over the last 2 years, as much as we like to clown Kyle Lowry sometimes, they made the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago in Lowry's debut, and then they made the NBA Finals last season. So he's been able to help the Heat go deep into the postseason, but he's just not been able to be the guy the Heat thought he was going to be when coming into the season, or when they signed him 2 years ago. And I don't think he can be the starter for this team with considering his age, considering his health. I just don't think it's a good idea for the Heat to roll with him in the starting lineup come this upcoming year. So let's jump into some trade ideas, and number 1 is quite the doozy, and it's a deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. The Heat send Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, and 1 first-round pick unprotected in 2028 for James Harden in a reunion with PJ Tucker. And I do, before I dive into this, I want to do a shout-out to Greg Sylvander, because he did a little thread on Twitter about all the trades the Heat can make with Lowry's deal that match salary-wise. So shout out Greg for inspiring most of these trade ideas. But I do want this trade to happen. Kyle Lowry and Duncan are an almost perfect fit salary-wise with James Harden and PJ Tucker. The difference is about $2 million between the 2 salaries, and it wouldn't cost that much draft capital to acquire Harden and Tucker, especially with how messy it is with Harden in Philadelphia. 1 first-round pick plus those 2 contracts would do it. But the problem is Pat Riley wouldn't do it. But I don't know why he wouldn't do it, because a starting 5 would look like this. You'd have James Harden at the point guard. Tyler Hero's the running mate in the backcourt, with Jimmy Butler, PJ Tucker, and Bam Adebayo in the front court. And remember the last time these 3 were in the front court together? They made the Eastern Conference Finals, and it was one of the best defensive teams in the league. Yes, the starting backcourt would have rough defensive mismatches, and it wouldn't be great. But it would be able to be masked a little bit with the defense in the front court. And you'd be able to also keep Josh Richardson on the bench, Nikola Jovic on the bench, Caleb Martin on the bench, and Jaime Jaquez Jr. on the bench. Yeah, it's a really deep team that can go 9-10 deep and have one of the best starting 5s in the league. This team would no doubt be the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference. And this roster, including the bench, would absolutely be able to compete with the Bucks and Celtics. I think the Heat should pull the trigger on this move. I doubt it happens, though. I'll ask you this, and it is today's pinned comment. I asked you yesterday, will the Heat trade Kyle Lowry? Today I'm asking you, should the Heat trade Kyle Lowry? Type Y for yes, type N for no. If you get hit with a YouTube ad break, let it play, scroll down, and answers today's pinned comment. Trade idea number 2 for the Heat is probably my second favorite out of the 5, and it's the Heat getting Monte Morris and Bojan Bogdanović from the Detroit Pistons in exchange for Kyle Lowry and a 2028 unprotected first-round pick. I really like this deal, man. I think it really is, like, out of the realistic ones, my most favorite. It is, because Bojan Bogdanović is a flat-out scorer who would fit perfectly at the power forward position for the Miami Heat. I mean, look at what he's been able to do over the past 4 seasons for the Utah Jazz, for the first 3 seasons, and the Detroit Pistons last year. Consistent 17-point-per-game scorer, adds the 4 rebounds a night, but the part that sells me and gets it over the top is he is one of the best 3-point shooters in the association. 41, 39, 38.7, and then 41 again. Bojan Bogdanović can light it up from beyond the arc and would be able to replace that Max Strus gave Vincent 3-point output, because Bogdanović can score from inside the arc, he can score from outside the arc. He is the perfect offensive 4 next to Bam and Jimmy. Yes, that would be a defensive liability, but the offense would be able to overcome the negatives on defense. And then just to throw in this as well, Monte Morris is a perfect backup point guard. If you want to roll with a starting lineup, I should say, Tyler Hero, Josh Richardson, Jimmy, Bogdanović, and Bam, and then have Monte Morris be that secondary ball handler off the bench alongside Caleb Martin and company, man, that is a really good rotation, and I would love to see Bogdanović and Morris in the 305. It is one of my favorite trade ideas I'm bringing up on today's show. Another favorite of mine is Prize Picks, a new sponsor here at the Heat Report, and I couldn't be happier that they're joining the program. You have to head over to Prize Picks. They are the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America and is available to play in 31 states. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. You see some of my selections on screen right now, and I did this for the entirety of the 23-24 NBA season. I'm going more than Anthony Edwards, 26 points per game this year, more than Paolo Banchero, 21.8 points per game, and then more than our main guy, Bam Adebayo, 9.3 rebounds per contest. I've had so much fun testing my skills during the football season, and the NBA season is just around the corner. If you have similar skills to mine, which unfortunately you probably don't, you could turn $10 into $250 with few taps with the most exciting daily fantasy app on the planet. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. One more time. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. All right, moving on here on the program. Kyle Lowry trade idea number 3, and this is sending Lowry into a 2028 first-round pick to Utah. A deal with Danny Ainge to get Collin Sexton in a reunion with big man Kelly Olynyk, and this one is very intriguing because when you look at what these two players could bring to your roster, it is scoring and shooting. I mean, Sexton only played in 48 games last season, but he averaged 14 a night, shooting 50% from the field and 39% from beyond the arc. And we know what Kelly Olynyk can bring to the table. He can be that big man at the power forward position or a small ball center that spreads the floor. You could run a 4-out, 1-in offense, or if Kelly Olynyk is your big man, you could run a 5-out offense where you have the whole paint to work with, which allows Jimmy Butler and Tyler Hero to get downhill because they know Kelly Olynyk is bringing the big man out, and if the big man helps, they can kick it out to Olynyk for a wide-open 3. He shot 39% from 3 last season, and I was not the biggest fan of Olynyk when he was with the Heat in his first tenure because I didn't like his defense, and I didn't think he was a good enough rebounder. But now with Bam Adebayo taking that next step, I believe Olynyk could be a perfect backup 5 or starting power forward next to Bam and Jimmy. I think this is a good deal. The question is, could Sexton fit on this team? Because he is a ball-dominant guard, and he would probably have to come off the bench, and he's not the best defender. But I will say this about Sexton. He tries, he hustles, and he has a winning mentality. He might not always win with the Cavs and Jazz, but he wants to win, and he has that dog mentality that the Heat culture really likes. Trade idea number 4 for Kyle Lowry. Lowry and 2 first-round picks You might not need to send 2, but I think to get the deal done, you would need to send 28 and 30 for Spencer Dinwiddie and Royce O'Neal. If you remember just last season, Royce O'Neal went for a first-round pick from Brooklyn. So I'm assuming he'll have to go for a first again. And then if you put Lowry in a first for Dinwiddie, I think that's what gets this job done. And these two could absolutely help your team. Dinwiddie averaged 17 points per game last season. And one thing I like about Dinwiddie and O'Neal is that they were durable last season. They both played above 76 games last season, and both can shoot the rock. Dinwiddie shot 37% from 3 last year. Royce O'Neal shot 39%. O'Neal's a little bit like P.J. Tucker in the fact that he's a good defender, a small ball 4, can't play the 5, but they can both play the 4. O'Neal can shoot the rock, but can't really score anywhere else. Dinwiddie, he can get his own isolation bucket. He's had experience being a sixth man. He's had experience being a starter. It would be interesting to see how Erik Spoelstra would employ him in this lineup. Would he start next to Tyler Hero? Would he be that sixth man? It's an interesting question, but there is no doubt about it in my mind that Dinwiddie and O'Neal would be a perfect blend of scoring, shooting, and defense. That's mainly O'Neal. I'd be very much interested in making that deal. Final Kyle Lowry trade idea on today's show is a basic one-for-one swap. The Heat sent Kyle Lowry and a second-round pick to the Charlotte Hornets for Gordon Hayward. And you might ask yourself, why would the Heat do this? Well, it just provides another scorer and that wing position, someone that could play the 4, play the 3 coming off the bench. It would be interesting to see how Erik Spoelstra would use Gordon Hayward. But Hayward had a bad season last year for Charlotte. I'll be honest with you. But the 3 seasons before that, he was pretty decent. He's had injury history over the last 4 seasons. Ever since he had that gnarly injury on opening night for the Celtics against the Cavs, he hasn't been the same guy, but he has been able to be someone who can shoot the rock from beyond the arc. 38, 41, 39. He has been a shooter. He's been a scorer his entire career. It took a dip this past season, but if he got shipped to Miami, there would be no doubt in my mind that he would be able to become a shooter again, get good again, and be someone who can really help this Heat team offensively. Now, the defense would be a question mark, like most of the guys we talked about, but I would be intrigued to take the flyer on Gordon Hayward. Both his and Lowry's deal are about $29, $31 million. Both of them are in their final year, so you're basically trading expiring for expiring and sending a second-round pick. I would be very interested in doing this deal. We went through 5 trades today that include Kyle Lowry, and I want to know which one is your favorite. Could it be the one where the Heat get James Harden and P.J. Tucker? That's number 1. Could it be where they get Monte Morris and Bojan Bogdanović? That's number 2. Maybe it's Collin Sexton and Kelly Olynyk. That's trade idea number 3. Spencer Dinwiddie and Royce O'Neal is trade idea number 4. And then to round out the show, Gordon Hayward is trade idea number 5. I think all 5 of these would improve this Heat roster and give them a better chance to win in this postseason. But let me know which one's your favorite. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If I had to pick one, my dream one is kind of I alluded to it off the top. It would be the first trade where the Heat get James Harden and P.J. Tucker. I just think that starting lineup is so versatile. You got the playmaking and shooting in the backcourt with Hero and Harden. You got the defense in the front court of Tucker, Bam, and Jimmy. And then you get to keep a bench that is pretty loaded in Josh Richardson, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Caleb Martin, and Nikola Jovic. I think that is a very solid roster that can really make things interesting in the Eastern Conference and almost form a trio in the East to where, like, not really anyone else matters besides the Bucks, Celtics, and Heat. But that's kind of been how it's been over the last 4 seasons anyway. Am I right? Thanks for following us on the Heat Report on today's show. Appreciate everyone if you still are here. If you are, you obviously love Heat basketball, and I'm doing something right. So make sure you follow me on Twitter at Nick_Roloff. I'm breaking down everything Miami Heat. So if you want to be more informed, follow me over on Twitter.